He's hating you.
Welcome to the In My Opinion Show with Ronald Barrington Robinson and friends. I want to introduce our very talented co-host, Mr. Henry Hatter.
Good afternoon, Ron.
Afternoon, Mr. Hatter, and Mrs. Jackie Williams.
Hello, everyone.
And welcome to our millions of viewers worldwide. Let's talk about General Motors and the UAW. History of the UAW is a long and storied history. It began back in 1936. I can remember my uncle and Coleman A. Young when they were both alive. As a kid, I would go down to Detroit and to visit my uncle. And his best friend was Coleman A. Young, all right? And it was very interesting. But I've forgotten much I was a little kid, so, I'm doing other things. And, but you know how kids are. Henry, you're alumni of General Motors.
And also the union.
In the union. And as we speak today, they're counting the votes. Maybe they've already counted them, and they've come to a
It has
decision.
already been approved.
Well, I'm talking about vote-wise.
It's been approved.
Okay, but it hasn't been ratified yet.
Yeah, I think
No,
it was.
it's ratified.
Yeah, it's
Is it?
ratified.
Mm-hmm. They go back to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sunday.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, give us what your thoughts on.
Well, Ron, General Motors is everything to, or nearly everything, to American industry.
And to Flint.
And to Flint.
And was.
And to Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And to the world. They put the world on wheels, and we should never forget that. Not only did they do that, but they also brought the middle class to Black Americans. And the reason I focus on Black Americans, I don't know, very seldom do I focus on one racial group. But in this case, I'm going to focus on them because they're the least likely to know how all of our platform turned to us to become part of the middle class. That was General Motors. And I argued that in 2008 to the Journal. And I said, well, we became part of the middle class in 1941 when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and many of our young boys had to go into services, and their families came to towns like Flint and Philadelphia and all of those places to help the war effort. And as a result, they made money equal to that of the white man, the white woman. That's how I wrote it. And George Jasper, who was the head of the political organization at the Flint Journal, said, well, we're going to talk to you, Henry, before we publish this article. And so I waited around, and I never shared in the Voice. They used my ideas, okay, but a man who lived at that time did comment. But he says, Henry Hatter, you are wrong. Black people became part of the middle class in 1936 or 7, during the time that the union struck and bargained for the rights of the workers. And black people were part of those records, and they had specifications that people who worked in certain categories got the same amount of pay. And this is how Black Americans became part of the middle class. Well, I think we were talking the same thing. They just had to have a way of taking that away from me at that time. I don't regret it, but that needed to be known. And at that time I focused on, if we had known that for all 77 years, we could have had our kids under control, crime under control, education. But it took 75 years for the American people, the institutions, colleges, universities, the Department of Labor, labor unions, the Journal, all of those, to admit that we were part of the middle class. A sham. And so, but back to General Motors and the union. I have nothing but praise for the unions as they helped General Motors, who was making lots of money at that time and didn't even know what to do with it. But unions helped to redistribute the wealth in such a way that we all benefited from. And today we're a great nation as a result of it. It never hurt us. But those kind of efforts had to be made, and they had to be ugly at times. And so I give the union a lot of credit for that. But also I criticize them for taking the company to the brinks of destruction. They wanted too much, and the company can't sustain it. And in 2008, when they went to Washington bankrupt, they could have never sustained the burden that they had, the legacy costs, insurance costs, the compensation that they had to pay, and accidents and stuff like that we had. And the environmental regulations, which just crippled General Motors and all the other companies. Something had to happen. So we bankrupted both Chrysler and the United States. I mean,
The big three.
Well,
Ford didn't come.
no, Ford was not
didn't
bankrupt.
come. So it was just Chrysler and GM.
It was Chrysler and GM.
Mm-hmm.
And so we owe a lot to the unions. But the unions owe a lot to General Motors, and so do we. And I, for one, will admit that I benefited from it. My family benefited, my dad and my grandpa and all of those people benefited from working for General Motors. And I want to see us not make the same mistakes that we made in 2008. The people will never forgive us. And Ms. Barra, the president of General Motors, has to make sure that we don't make the same mistake. And her staff has to make sure. They got to make tough decisions. You got to get rid of some people. Whoever it is, as long as you do it fairly and equitably, that's okay, because that's business. You're in business to make money, not to provide us jobs for a lifetime. We have to compete for those. The end.
Well, do you agree that General Motors building these billion-dollar facilities in Mexico and in China?
Yeah, they have to do whatever. See, those are business decisions we have no business interfering with. And nor does the union. The union has absolutely no right to tell General Motors what it should build, how it should build, when it should build. But what they need to provide to the union, equal wages, safety, consideration for safety and wages.
But isn't that taking jobs away from the American workers when they're building, these facilities and these billion-dollar facilities in Mexico and in China?
Yeah.
And they're hiring those folks over there. You know what I mean? Substantially less wages,
which is none of our business.
Yeah, but it is.
That's a national interest.
We
can't tell people what to do inside the countries.
But we don't have to go over there. That's my issue.
Okay. Oh, good.
All right.
Good point. But
to take jobs away from Americans.
But who's
going to buy those expensive cars? And there will be some, but who will buy those cars to the extent that in Mexico or in China that Americans would?
Well, there are two reasons that we have overlooked. One is that the people who live in those communities overseas would like to have American cars. They said, but you have to bring some of those job-making jobs to our country, employ our people. Otherwise, we're just transferring gold to you for your product. And we just don't do that. It's got to be equitable and fair. And not only that, Americans have to compete strongly to retain their jobs here. They got to go to work on time. They got to be there. They got to reduce waste. They got to stop stealing and stuff like that from a company. It can't survive under those circumstances.
Well, I understand all of that, but back to my original question, okay? Those folks in Mexico, I'll use this as an example, all right, not a fact, but workers in Mexico, all right, $8 an hour compared to the line workers, and, in General Motors or Chrysler's here making $30, $40, $50 an hour. You know what I mean? China the same way. Okay, I was reading some information, some material, all right, where it takes a Chinese worker, okay, to work a whole month. You know what I mean, to make a decent wage.
Should we be concerned about that?
Sure.
Okay, now let me explain my side of it.
And then let me just finish this here. Because the product that they produce in Mexico, which are good, in China, which are good, okay, but then have you seen them big container ships that come back over here with they'll carry maybe 5,000 or 10,000 cars? Okay, they come back here, you know what I mean, from Mexico or China, and then they put them in our lots, all right, and then they sell them for Lord knows how much, $60,000.
They let the market share determine all of that, and we live in a worldwide community. We don't live isolated anymore. And people in the rest of the world that don't have the resources say they have a right to commiserate and whatever activities that go on in the United States that they make money from. And if they are buying your product, we have an obligation to kind of allow them, not to allow them, but to permit them to build those products there. And by doing so, the people who live there, who having never had these opportunities before, will, by their measures, become rich. Just with you said $10 an hour, and our men here are getting $25 an hour. Let's say there's that gap. But they are richer there with the $10 an hour than they've ever been before.
Well, I don't disagree with that. That's the only thing that I agree with Trump. You know what I mean? With this battle with China right now. Okay, they've taken advantage of America for years. All right, but that's the only thing I agree with.
That's because we've let them do that.
Mm-hmm.
They've stole lots of secrets and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Well, we were easy to steal, and many people who worked for companies that had all of these secrets didn't mind selling them.
Okay, here I come. Okay, I just wanted. I appreciate all of the information. So this is where I stand. My husband and my sisters, they are UAW, and I'm on the outside looking in, so I have a different view. And when I look at them, they have something that I don't have. So my employer, because we're in a right to work state, so my employer can come in and just say something off the rip that, and then I have no one to fight for me. So I respect the unions, but at the same time, I respect the idea that we need to have a fair relationship. And I know years ago, and you guys, true is true, the right is right and wrong is wrong. We took advantage of those great jobs that GM gave a lot of people in Flint. It was a lot of abuse on both sides. People were not doing what they were supposed to do. They put out products that did not sell. They had flaws. They had recalls. But at the same time, you said, I like this, the World on Wheels. We put GM World on Wheels because it all started here. And we help establish GM to be what it is. And without the people, GM would not be able to go move forward from any point. So back to the rights of the workers, if I help build you and then you leave me and then you take my job because they left Flint, they raped Flint. You look around and look at all you established back when we were growing up. We had plants and people everywhere, and there were stores and small businesses, and then you look at
black businesses.
Yeah, you look at the factor of a growing city have small businesses on every corner. And when GM pulled out of Flint, it raped us of a lot of stuff that we were used to having. And Flint wasn't able to reestablish itself. I mean, it's doing a lot better now. But it took a long time to reinvent ourselves. So we have to be compensated. So now GM is they're dating us part-time, as I would say. They're not married to us like they were. They came back, they're dating us part-time because we got quite a bit of plants in Flint again. And a company just came here. I don't know the name of it right off, but
Lears.
No, it's another one. It came out of Kansas or something. It's here now.
Okay.
250 people. So what I'm saying is, I understand that you need to be fair on both sides, but what it is you got people used to having a certain way of living, and then you took it from them. So then what they did is they chased the dollar. So I know personally, my own sister, she moved all the way to New York because her plant was closing. So this is why the UAW gets irritated when you take jobs to Mexico, is because my sister left her family to go to New York to have a job. Then when you close those plants, and then I've known people that went to Kansas, they closed that plant. They went to St. Louis, they closed that plant. So they're chasing their jobs to try to do what they need to do to maintain a certain type of living, which is only fair. But then when you just take all the jobs and throw them overseas and then pay them partial wages, and then we get, my husband says all the time, parts come back from Mexico or wherever your plant is, and they're not right. Because they don't have the same work ethics we have. They don't have the same standards that we have. So there is a lot of give and take. But back to what we're dealing with, GM, I mean, you can't go on and buy a new car under what, $35,000? Not a decent one. So if I am building cars, and I mean, my sister and my husband says all kinds of cars come out of there all day. And just multiply that of how much money they're making. And for you not to turn around and trickle down the wealth, it's not fair. You know, their wages haven't been increasing, and then people say, well, they make all that money. Well, they work for a company that makes a lot of money. So your employees should make something, relevant to what your company is making. So they deserve the money that they get because they work hard. They work 6 and 7 days. And like the temp workers, I mean, boy, they were getting over on them. They worked 5 years and still was temp workers. They still didn't have benefits. So this contract ratified all of that. So the temporary workers now can be full-time employees. And then the wages have been stagnant. They did the 2-tier, but the regular workers' wages haven't increased in years.
Well, that's coming. Now, see.
Well, they just got ratified.
General Motors had to reestablish itself. It cannot go back into the marketplace on wobbly feet. It has to be stable. General Motors this time is here to stay, it hopes, until 35 years from now we forget everything and then we start all over. But but we need to produce a product that everybody wants, and we're producing Chevrolet trucks. Everybody loves the Ford trucks and the Chevrolet trucks and the Rams and so on and so forth. Those are the products that Americans want. But there's something that's threatening the production of those vehicles. It's the cost of gasoline. And yet we're working on hybrid engines, and we're working on different kind of fuels that we can use to increase the overall gas mileage. Mm-hmm. And that's and yet retain the same capacity in the truck, where you can sit 4 people across, whereas the rest of the world is squeezing the capacity. And we may come to that sooner or later, unless we can find new ways of providing more and more petroleum to fuel our
Now,
fleets.
you remember, as you were talking, I just remembered Obama remember he did a big rebate where if you had an older car, you could bring it in. And that got rid of a lot of old cars because people went into the next level. But I know this is a little out there, but you were talking about the gasoline shortage or whatnot. Well, I'm thinking of, like, my car takes flex fuel.
Yeah.
Now, under Trump administration, they have tried to take back some of the requirements to reduce cars, the fuel.
Emissions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so my car takes flex fuel, and I used to really look around to see. And under Trump administration, they have reduced the production of flex fuel, which hurt farmers. And
Well,
hold on. I'm coming. Hold on. And which hurt farmers. So where it used to be a ratio of flex fuel will be like $1 plus cheaper than regular gas. Do you know there's only like a 40-cent difference now? Because under this administration, they don't push things that are environmental, safe. They don't push those kind of things. They want to go back to when we were just doing whatever.
we can never go back.
Well, tell your president. So anyway, so my point is, explain to me the difference in flex fuel, and why would you withdraw the production of flex fuel when it was healthier for the economy, for the environment, and have such a short difference of what it really is, because that's what GM was doing. They were building cars that require flex fuel. Well, if you're not going to have anybody that sells it.
Well, there's another component that you're not looking at.
What is it?
It's the product that people want. People want those trucks. They want those big cars.
They have flex
They
fuel.
want the high emitters, and that requires using a different ratio of gasoline to ethanol. Let's see.
Yeah. So they use ethanol.
Yeah, but and besides, farmers are in the business to raise crops.
They take corn and make it.
Compensate their loss in production of corn and wheat that goes into building flex fuels with increased production of corn, wheat, and other vegetation to be sold on the open market to foreign interest. They have a way to ratchet that. We do that every year when we change our gasolines, for example, from summertime gasoline to wintertime gasoline, because in the wintertime gasoline you got to have more of the lighter fractions in it, and it costs a little bit more to develop. And
so you're saying that the farmers are not able to produce both? They're not able to do corn for crops and corn
well, you got to have the marketplace. They got to go out and search, and you got to have favorable regulations to open up those markets in foreign nations, so that the farmers
But
can
we
sell
had
the
did that because they were pushing us to, because that's why GM started putting on here flex fuel friendly, and we started using it, and they said it is better. But now that under the Trump administration, they have decreased the production of it, and the farmers are complaining. So
hundreds of thousands of
and that's what they must do, and that's those are dynamics that have to be worked out between the farmer and government and foreign markets, and the government has no right of doing it for them. It's market driven.
I understand it's market driven, but it was increasing. It shows, the stats show that it was increasing. The usage of flex fuel was increasing, but the production was halted by the administration.
Because they were not producing the kind of vehicles that people wanted. They wanted those hogs that use.
But I'm saying, even my husband have what does he have? Whatever, my sister, all of us have flex fuel vehicles. Okay. But what I'm saying is, if I have a vehicle that takes something environmentally friendly, and you're not producing what it takes, because when you go to, you used to can go to all the stores, Kroger's, Myers still have it, but they don't have the pumps anymore because the production was reduced, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but we have to establish a balance between the environment and between products that drive the economy.
I understand that, but at the same time, but it just helps.
One can't supersede the other.
Right.
We have to have balance.
What you were saying about the gasoline. GM wants to produce things because this is helping the union. When you produce something that's selling, it's helping the union. That's why trucks weren't selling prior to Obama coming in and saying, hey, let's do this.
Yeah.
So they were selling because we reduced.
You have answered your own question.
But what I'm saying is your president changed the game again. So now I can't find flex fuel. It's turned from GM to I want my flex fuel.
You can drive to Detroit to get your flex fuel.
No, I can. I want my flex fuel because I was trying to be obedient to the environment.
Yeah, we understand.
And it's calling us right now to be obedient, or it's going to turn on us.
And that's a good point to be made, because we have to move more toward environmental preservation as we move into the future. And the young people don't want to live like this. They're going to change it anyway, no matter what we think. They're going to be more environmentally friendly. As you saw a month ago, we had this worldwide recycling day that kids came out all over the world and said, we don't like the way we're doing the environment right now, and it must change.
Are you a recycle person?
Yes, I am.
Are you a recycle person?
Sometime.
Do you not know, I am just really, ever since this environmental thing has come, we have to be more hands-on. I recycle in my neighborhood. It's so funny. It's like, who could fill up their bin?
No, now here's the kicker here. For what General Motors is doing and the union doesn't like, guess what's leading in the darkness over there looking at us? It's not a snake.
Who is it?
It's technology, robots. And when the people say, I don't like that and I can't do that, guess what takes over? Technology, ingenuity. And we will further decimate the ability of people to have jobs. And we eventually will, and someone has already proposed it, that we give everybody, $10,000 a year as a guaranteed income. It's coming. Technology will build robots that can do everything that humans can do. We need to delay that as much as possible.
Exactly. With that, let's change topic or change gears here. Within the vein of what we're talking about right now, Jackie, are you better off today than you were 3 years ago?
No, because we can just go with the taxes. I can't write off, and Lord knows I pay so many taxes in Grippling. I can't write off taxes. I mean, things like I used to could write off because he got rid of the deductions. And so where I would be able to deduct this high tax rate and all these other things, I can't deduct them. So we're middle class and we're paying so much in taxes. So the tax breaks did not help us.
That's a Republican attitude. You are one of us.
No. Change me now. So I am not better off because we're paying more in taxes and we're paying more for goods, especially since this Trump war with China. It says America has paid billions of dollars in tariffs and it is not affecting the right people. So no, I would say stop now, turn from this, and let's vote in a Democrat.
Real quickly, Henry, what do you think?
I think I'm better off, and I think that most Americans are better off. I think that we're moving in the right directions. Everything won't rectify itself overnight, but we're striving to get there so we have parity across the board.
Good. Well, I don't feel good about, I'm not better off because Snyder took $100 a month from me.
Well, he did to all retirees. He took mine too.
But with that, let's bring in my opinion, close to a close. Until next time, stay focused.
Good show.